Today I'm going to be speaking to Frank Sinclair, an old teammate of mine. Haven't spoken to him for many, many years. So Frank is a former footballer, used to play for Chelsea, Leicester, Burnley and Jamaica International. How's it going, Frank? How's things?
I'm good, DT. Good to see you, mate. All's good my end. Just enjoying a little bit of a break at the minute before it all goes crazy again with the new season.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we haven't spoken years now. I mean, I left Leicester back in, I think it was 2001, 2. So we haven't touched base since then. So, I mean, like I said, really appreciate you coming on. You're looking well. I didn't think anything other than that anyway. You look exactly the same. You haven't changed. You haven't changed.
Right. I wish I felt the same.
I can imagine. Well, just in brief then, just let me know kind of like how's life for you at the minute, what you're up to, how you're keeping yourself active. I do see you on Sky Sports, obviously doing the punditry now and again. So really pleased that you're on, obviously, on that, and you're still involved in football to some capacity as well.
Yeah. So obviously, I've just left a job at Port Vale Football Club where I was head of coaching. I've been big in the coaching side of football since I really left the game as a player, really. I was lucky enough that my first opportunity as a manager came while I was still playing. I was playing in the conference for a Welsh team called Colwyn Bay, and the opportunity came up for me to become player manager. It wasn't something that I was really looking to do, to be honest. It was something that I'd not really thought about, to be honest, Danny. I was thinking more I was going to go down the media route because I was already working for Chelsea TV on a regular basis for 3 or 4 years, just covering games when I could, when there weren't a clash, obviously, with my own games. So I was getting used to that media side of it, doing bits and bobs for BBC 5 Live and TalkSport and all that sort of stuff. So I saw my route. I was even thinking about, the next step for me was going to be start educating myself in that media environment, i.e. going for courses at university and stuff like that, media courses, and was taking a lot of advice going that route. And then the opportunity to coach came along. I ended up being a manager at that level for 2 years and still a player as well. So it was thrown in at the deep end, really, but really enjoyed it. Had the passion for being on the grass and being involved with helping players improve and develop. And I thought that would be my niche going forward. So obviously I went down the route of doing all my coaching badges with the Welsh FA and got right up to my UEFA A licence, and just on the verge of working towards my UEFA Pro licence now. And since then I've had various jobs. One thing I've always thought to myself is in football, because of the rivalry, the intensity of roles and stuff like that, being in and out of jobs, I've always thought to myself, make myself as adaptable as possible. So I've coached at different levels. I've gone right from academy coaching at under 12s level, right through to under 21s. I've obviously managed at senior level and done a little bit with ladies football and stuff like that. So what I wanted to do was just be adaptable to opportunities. And I think that's really important in football, in the coaching world especially, because you lose your job so quickly in this game. It's pretty brutal. So you have to be prepared to, look at other opportunities and sometimes come out of your comfort zone.
That's massive. And it's good that you're still involved in the game. I mean, for me, if I was a youngster and I was coming up in the game and I had a coach who had played the game to a level that you did, and obviously played international football as well, it can only bode well for whoever you're coaching, because by nature, they're going to look up to you because you've been there and done it. You've not only been there and done it, you've done it to a high level on a consistent basis. So I'm glad that you're still involved in the game. It bodes well for the future for wherever you're kind of coaching, really. But you mentioned a couple of things there that are they stuck out to me. You mentioned about kind of coming out of your comfort zone, which is a massive thing that I think athletes need to not only be aware of. I mean, you're generally doing it when you're playing anyway, but when it comes to retirement, it's something that you're probably going to have to do as well, just to obviously get your foot in the door elsewhere in terms of future employment. And you mentioned there that you're obviously coaching at different levels, and you've coached boys and girls and obviously men, women, whatever it may be, at different levels. Yeah. So that's a good thing as well. So how are you seeing it from the other side of the fence? Obviously, you've been a player, you had your opinions when you were a player, like we all do. Yeah. And now you're at the other side, How are you finding that?
Um, for me, it was quite an easy transition because I've always been open-minded and quite relaxed about, playing the game, and I didn't get too carried away with my career that I had. I had a reasonable career, was fortunate enough to play at the highest level in this country for close to 15 years. So very fortunate in that way. But one thing that happens in football that I think is, we touched on it off recording, when you're in that bubble and being around it and you're almost under pressure to keep up the standards of other players, regardless of the pay brackets and whatever it might be, buying the best cars, buying the nicest clothes, going out, spending money and stuff like that. And you get caught up in that. And you always think that it's always going to be there because it's just, you're used to getting paid week in, week out for many years. And you don't really think about what's the next step, what are you going to do afterwards, what are you going to do when that income, that support that you've had is not there no more. Are you looking after your money? Are you investing it well? I was fortunate enough that I invested my money in property quite young. From when I was still at Chelsea, I was buying property in and around London and stuff like that, and doing little buy-to-lets and stuff. So I was setting myself up to be comfortable anyway. And obviously, when I got towards the end of my career, that's when I started thinking, right, next steps, what am I going to do? I've got to have the money for a rainy day to make sure I can be comfortable, and more importantly, make decisions that are the decisions that I want to make going forward, not decisions that I'm making because maybe of a desperate situation. So it's for the youngsters nowadays, I've got a son that's playing the game, just started now as a 20-year-old playing in League Two. So he's going to have to work his way up through the leagues to be able to get where he wants to be in life and what he wants to achieve. So he's doing it the other way around, and I'm quite happy with that because he's coming from nothing and having to work his way through. And I think when you do it that way around, you use Jamie Vardy as a massive example. I think you appreciate the game at the top that little bit extra. And, I advise him all the time, you've got to look after your money because you're a long time retired and it comes round really quickly.
Definitely, yeah. And it's again, so your son's obviously really lucky because he's got a dad in yourself that's been there and done it. So all the kind of mistakes or lessons that you've learned throughout your career, you can obviously give him that advice to make sure that he doesn't obviously fall into those kind of pitfalls. And it seems like you're pretty switched on from a young age. You mentioned obviously at Chelsea. So when you're at Chelsea, you're a really young player and obviously playing first team, but you've used that money to, obviously enjoy yourself, but you've also invested it, which is obviously really, really sensible going forward. And obviously that will benefit you throughout your career. So when you were doing that then, did that help you with your mindset on the pitch? Because you knew that, okay, well, I'm getting this money, I've invested it, so that's kind of taking care of itself off the pitch. Did that allow you to perform a little bit better on the pitch, knowing that you didn't really have to kind of think about kind of second income at that point?
I think it would have been subconscious, to be honest, Dan, with you, because, at a young age at Chelsea, playing at such a high level, with the expectations that was at that football club at the time, going through a massive transition, started to get all the top foreign players coming to join the club. I was just focused on my football. I was, the reason why I did invest in stuff like that, that was because of the people that I had around me, surrounding myself with sensible people around me that was giving me that correct type of advice. And like you said, I touched on it with my son about, we're starting to have those discussions, even though he's only 20 now, we're starting to have those discussions about getting him on the property ladder and starting to put that money away and for a later term. But it's not only with my son that I do it. I mentor quite a few young footballers in and around the country anyway, through an agency that I do a little bit of work for. And part of the work that I do is mentoring them. I've experienced what they've had to go through to get to the top, and what they may well have to go through to get to the top as well. So I use my experiences, and if it isn't something that's happened to me, it's something that I've seen happen to somebody else or whatever it might be. I use that to try and guide the players nowadays because, there's a lot of agents about that are in the game for the wrong reasons. But then there's a lot of good agents that are out there that will give that right advice. And sometimes I think to myself, because my son's playing, I thought, let me mentor him rather than put the trust in somebody else to deal with it, because who's got any better experience to give the advice to my son than my actual self? So that's the road that I've gone down. But going back to your question about at the time of playing, I think I was so focused on just trying to be the best I could be in a competitive league and in a competitive team where it was tough enough just to get in the side week in, week out, was my main aim. So I sort of like, away from football, yes, I'd enjoy myself and I'd socialise and I'd try and put myself around the right sort of people, but also I use that time to obviously plan for the future as well, because, you know, as you know, as being a footballer, you get so much time to yourself, but you just take it to granted. Finishing training at 2 or 3 o'clock every day, every afternoon, and you'll just go home. And now I see the players that are in the game now. They go home and they're on the computer games and all that, and they're just wasting time when they could be really investing in themselves again, whether it be financially or whether it be educationally, whatever it might be. So I try and advise them to use that time wisely.
Sure, definitely, that makes sense, and obviously great advice as well. So I want to touch on a little bit about kind of your retirement now, and I know you briefly kind of skimmed over it a little bit earlier, but kind of at what stage in your career did you think now's the time for me to retire? And obviously when you got to that stage and you were kind of thinking about transitioning away from football, how did you feel? Did you have anyone around you that could point you in the right direction, or was you kind of on your own, or like what was the thought process behind it?
Yeah, I felt a little bit isolated because, you know, all of a sudden when you retire, the phone stops ringing, you know, from individuals or people that you know in the game, and you do feel a little bit isolated. So I do get where the whole conversation on mental health and stuff like that come into the game when people are retiring from professional sport, not just football. You know, you hear it about boxers, you hear it about other sports as well, that, you know, they miss that adulation that they've always had. And, you know, the opportunity to compete, when that goes away from you, it takes a massive lump out of your life. So for me personally, I felt a little bit isolated, but like I said, I was fortunate enough that I made the choice to go through the leagues downwards to carry on playing, because, you know, I played in every level. I played in the Premier League. I went from Premier League to the Championship, went from Championship to League One, and then League Two, and even played in the Conference going into my late 30s, early 40s. So I kept myself in the game by dropping down the levels because I just loved playing football, and I still felt that I had something to offer, especially with my experience and stuff, to younger players like we're touching on. You know, I found myself almost coaching on the pitch while I was still playing towards the end of my career, helping players understand the game, and even at times talking to the opposition. I was playing against the centre forward, and I'd be telling him about what sort of runs he's got to make, and I'm playing against him. So it was always in my mind that I was going to go down that coaching route once, you know, you start getting that type of mindset. And obviously, you know, like I said, I had one foot in the door when it came to the media side of things, and Chelsea Football Club were brilliant with me, you know, being an ex-player there and utilising, you know, something that sort of like I didn't even realise was a talent that I had, was being able to talk about the game and being comfortable in front of the cameras and doing that side of it. I really learned my trade in that, in working for Chelsea TV for 5 or 6 years before I went on to the likes of Sky Sports and Premier League TV and all that side of it as well.
Brilliant. And then, like, so obviously not everyone's the same. So I always say when I speak to people on here, like for me, my transition, I didn't lay any solid foundations. I just had the mindset that, okay, if I haven't got enough money in the bank when I retire to then maybe do something that I want to do, as in set up my own company or whatever, I'm going to have to work. But there's no right or wrong. I played with players who went to college, who went to uni, who were studying kind of whilst they were playing, or ones that went and did your generic coaching badges. Now, I didn't really want to do any of those things whilst I was playing. One, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do afterwards. So I didn't want to just go to uni just for the sake of going to uni. Pointless. Didn't really see myself as doing anything with regards to football afterwards in terms of coaching. Just wanted to do something completely different. Hence why I'm in the property industry now. So there's no right or wrong way, and that's something that I try and put across when I'm doing the podcast. So why do you then think that some people find it harder than others, aside from your normal personality traits that are obviously different? Why do you think some find it hard? Why do you think some find it easy?
Well, I think it's down to the individual, as in their mindset, and I think sometimes it's almost about just accepting the fact that your career is over. Some people do find it hard and think to themselves they're going to be in football for a long time, and maybe they haven't thought about, the future. Someone that I grew up with as a young player at Chelsea, my best mate was a guy called Udo Onware, and he played for Fulham at the time. So we went through the academy together. He was at Fulham and I was at Chelsea. And when he got to about the age of 26, he was still playing sort of like lower levels. Blackpool he played for, Lincoln City, etc. He wasn't earning a great deal of money doing that. And he had the forefront to think to himself, I'm going to start, because he was a Nigerian guy, he was naturally quite well educated because of the background that he came from.
Yeah.
And like his mum was a doctor, his dad was in medical stuff and all that sort of stuff. So he came from an intelligent background. And he rang me one day and said, he was still playing League Two level, only 26. And he rang me one day and said to me, I'm hanging my boots up. And I was like, what are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, well, what about the money you're going to earn over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years playing at that level? Still not bad money. And he was like, no, Frank, listen, I'm going to go and educate myself. I'm going to do my law degree. And I was like, wow. So he ended up throwing or hanging his boots up at 26, done 10 years of the law school to pass his bar and all that side of it. He now works for the FA, doing all the lawyer side of stuff for them and representing some high-profile players in the game, playing in the Premier League and stuff like that. So he made a really good decision at an early age. And at the time, I was thinking he was crazy by doing that. Do you know what I mean? But after you look back at it now and you just totally get it, he was probably earning, I don't know, probably £400 or £500 a week playing at League Two level in them days, and thinking that's not going to carry me on throughout the rest of my life, and what I've got to do, bring up a family, whatever it might be, that's not going to get me there. So he was brave enough to make that decision, and I thought, I admired him so much for it. At the time, I thought he was mad, but after 2 or 3 years of watching his development as he was educating himself in the law industry, I admired him so much for that, and he now looks after my business for me as well. So it's
wow,
full circle.
That's crazy, yeah. Defo full circle, and it's good that he had the foresight to do that. Obviously, really brave, really interesting, and I suppose it's easier to do when you haven't got any dependents. Because as soon as you got kids and that, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, okay, well, I've got kids here. I can't really just give up football if I'm gonna go into studying and stuff with no income. So it's always easy.
Well, the thing that I think is good now is I think there's more emphasis on, in youth development especially, there's more emphasis on the educational side of it. You push it just as much as the football now. I've been in academies for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've seen it at first hand how much they show that it's just as important, the educational side of the game, as your education in your football side of it as well. So I think the kids now benefit from better formats than we obviously had at the time. I think we were just more, yes, we have to do the education because it's part of it, but it was sort of like swept under the carpet, and you just focused on the game, which is obviously not benefiting everybody, because for all the players that do make it, as you probably know as well, there's thousands that don't make it for everyone that does. Do you know what I mean? So it is a brutal industry.
100%. And also for the ones that actually do make it, there's different levels of what you call make it. There's obviously ones that play at lower level, and then ones that obviously sustain a career at a high level. And many facets and strands can come into why you're at that level. Could be injury, or just wrong place at the wrong time, or new management, as you know. So various different things. And I don't sometimes, well, even to this day, I still don't think people understand how hard it is to not only make it, but sustain a career at a decent level.
Yeah.
It's so hard. There's so many kind of different factors that can play against kind of your career progression. In terms of yourself, kind of what transferable skills do you think you've taken away from football that have allowed you to do what you're doing now? So media work and coaching and things like that.
Yeah, well, obviously the first thing would be just my what's the word I'm looking for? My education in the game has given me the opportunity to talk about the game afterwards because of my experiences of the levels that I played at, and that gave me the opportunity to go into media first and foremost. But you know, towards the end of my career, I captained a few clubs, so I learned a lot of leadership skills. You know, obviously leading groups of players, etc., and then going into management as well. You're obviously the main leader when it comes to that. So I think those were you know your typical skills that you'd get out of the game, and the responsibilities that you take on to leaving the game and what you're going to do next. Now those leadership skills, those opportunities to speak to people, speak to crowds and stuff, you can take that into any sort of different industry. You know, yourself being in property, I'm sure there's times where you have to stand up in front of a room and talk to people and do presentations on property and stuff like that. And you know, those are the skills that I got from the game that I felt was quite natural for me to take on to the coaching side of it and mentoring as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, for me, from what I can remember, you was always someone who, like, a good communicator on the pitch and off it as well, to be honest. So it doesn't surprise me that you've obviously gone on to do some type of media work. I am surprised that you went into coaching though, because I didn't see that side of you, to be honest. So for you to go into coaching, it's interesting. And obviously, again, it's just how sometimes things happen. Again, when things change over years, don't they? 10, 15 years ago, if you'd have told me that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I probably would have kind of laughed in your face, to be honest. So
yeah,
it's just about that transition.
No, I totally agree with you when it comes to the coaching side, because there's different characters in the game, and I was certainly one of the boys and amongst the group, and one of the lads that, you know, would get that team spirit going, and whether it be on nights out, whether it be just in and around changing rooms or in around the environment, whatever it might be, I was one of the boys and one of the main boys, a leader in that sense. So probably not taken as seriously if people were looking on that, yeah, he's going to go into the game and he's going to do that. But I found my passion was the main source of me wanting to coach. It was my passion still for the game, and my willingness my will to win, should I say. You know, I always had that as a player, and when I went into the management and the coaching side of things, it was no different. I had a massive will to win that carried me through to going into coaching.
Would you say then, like, I'm talking generically now on a broad scale, so not just football, all sports, would you say retirement needs to be approached in a different way? So I'm talking from a player's or athlete's mindset, and also from the coaches and all the governing bodies as well.
Yeah, I think without scaring people that are still working in the game and athletes or whatever it might be, I think it's a conversation that has to be generalized more often, because you speak to young players, and if you speak to them when they're 22, 23, they don't want to hear about retirement. You know, that's miles away from it. They don't want to hear about it, and we were no different. You just want to focus on your game. So, you know, I think it's important to have the right things in place for, you know, people that want to do things, like, rather than having to go and do it individually or go and search to do things, have these things in place that if people do want to do further education while they're still playing and stuff, and that side of it, then we have to make sure that those sources are there for them. But, you know, like I said, you don't really want to scare players with talking about retirement when they're too young. But I think when you get close to your 30s and that, you start to get a bit more sensible and a bit more of an idea about your own identity and what you want to do going forward. And then that's when you should be really looking to plant the seeds in place to build towards that.
Definitely. And do you miss playing at all?
No, I didn't. You know, I was fortunate enough, like I said to you before, that I played into my early 40s at quite a reasonable level. So I think I took the legs and the mileage as far as it could go. But I was really pleased to do that because I enjoyed every part of it. And I didn't carry on playing because I had to. I carried on playing because I loved playing the game, and I wasn't really ready to hang the boots up. And one thing that a lot of ex-players that, you know, before my time always said to me was, play as long as you can because you're a long time retired. And that's always been something that's rang in my ears towards the end of my career, and I certainly did do that. So no, I don't miss the game. I still love being on the grass. It's the next best thing, is being on the grass, being in and around players, and you know, trying to improve them as individuals and collectively as well.
Amazing stuff. So I want to touch on your career now. Obviously, you made your debut for Chelsea as a youngster. So how did it feel, kind of making your debut, but not just making your debut, like leading up to that? Because normally you can kind of sense when it's coming, the coaches are kind of bigging you up and you're playing well, and the senior players are kind of looking up to you and saying, like, this guy's the next one to come through. How was that process like? What was it feeling like for you at that time?
Well, it was quite natural for me because I'd seen it so much in recent years at Chelsea. You know, before me, you know, there was a lot of players getting in the first team. You know, the likes of Jason Cundy, who obviously works for TalkSport now, Graham Lasso, Graham Stewart. There were so many players, Craig Burley. There were so many players that was a couple of years above me that were making their debuts. So it was something that I was visualising all the time. So it was making me very confident that, you know, if I worked hard enough and I focused myself in the right manner, then I would get the opportunity as well. My debut, I made my debut at 18 years of age. I probably felt within my own head that I should have been in the team about a year before because of my own self-confidence and how I was as a person. I wanted it earlier than probably it was right to want it. But when I did get the opportunity, I was very confident because, you know, I'd been in and around the first team. I'd already been out on loan to West Brom, who were in League One at the time, and experienced playing first team football. And it was a successful loan spell at West Brom. So when I came back, I really felt that I was really matured and ready to play. And then when I did get my opportunity, obviously, you know, I took it with both hands.
Yeah, and then you obviously went on and you stayed in the team, sustained the kind of position within the defence at Chelsea for many years. And then you got that move to Leicester. And obviously I was at Leicester at the time when there was talks about signing yourself. And for me, that was like a massive signing because obviously household name at the time, and you're coming from Chelsea, which is a massive club. But for you, kind of, how did it feel? Because obviously some may see that, or some may think that Chelsea to Leicester is like a step down. And obviously by nature, different location, different kind of mindset, maybe different approach to the way they play. You might know Neil, who I hold at the highest regard in terms of managers because he gave me my debut at 18. Coming into that team and coming into Leicester, and obviously what was the thought process at that point for you? How did you find the transition from Chelsea to Leicester?
Yeah, it was very difficult at first, Danny, to be honest with you, because it wasn't something that I expected. It happened almost overnight. You know, I was obviously still at Chelsea through the whole pre-season, played most of the games through pre-season. We'd signed some top players, the likes of Marcel Desailly, Ferreira, Kazaragi. So we're signing some real top players. And all I was looking for was that we'd qualified for the Champions League. And that was the next step for me. That was the next test, being in and around a team that were playing in the Champions League for the first time as well. You know, I played a big part in the season before. We won 2 competitions. I scored in the final of the League Cup, which was obviously our other trophy that we won, as well as the Cup Winners' Cup. And I was just thinking that I was going from strength to strength and getting better and better. And then obviously I got the old dreaded phone call from the agent to say that Chelsea had accepted a bid off of Leicester. The agent, you know, probably advised me on his own benefits rather than mine, because, you know, if I look back at it with the experience that I've got now, I would have probably said to me, don't go, stay and fight for your place. But I was adamant that, you know, if I felt like I was almost being abandoned. So, you know, the messages that were coming out of Chelsea to me from the owners and stuff was that you've got to go, etc. And all I wanted to hear was stay and fight for your place. That's what I wanted to hear, because I was confident enough within my own ability that I would get in the team that season. Yeah. Anyway, but I didn't hear that. So ultimately, you know, Martin O'Neill arranged to meet me, and credit to him, he turned my mindset around. You know, the first conversation I had with him, I met him in a hotel on the M1. I sat down with him and John Robertson, and the first thing they said to me was, "Can you believe he's here?" And I was like, "What?" And they went, "I can't believe you're here sitting with us, because as far as I'm concerned, apart from Tony Adams, you're the best defender in the Premier League." And I was like, straight away, that made me feel 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
And the mind games, it's the mind games. And they were very clever with it, because then we sat down and we started talking about Leicester's team, who I knew that played for the club. Obviously, I knew Muziazir because he came through the academy at Chelsea. And, you know, obviously from playing against Leicester, I knew the big name players in your team, your Steve Walshes, your Matt Elliott's, your Neil Lennons, and your Tony Cotties, and Heskey was obviously a young boy coming through. So I knew a fair bit about the side. And he just sat down and started explaining to me, these players, this is where, and then he started talking to me about where he wanted me to fit in this jigsaw and stuff. And I almost sat with him and I was visualizing what he was talking about and buying into it all. And before you knew it, he had me. You know, I remember going away from that meeting. We must have sat down for an hour and a half and spoke about football. And I went away from that meeting, got in the car with my agent. And as we started driving away, I went to him, hang on, we didn't even talk about money. What's going on? We just sat there and spoke about football. I don't even know what they're offering me. Yeah. And my agent said, don't worry about it. You'll be on a lot more money than you was on at Chelsea. That's all you need to know. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, okay. So, you know, he was very clever about the way he'd done it. And straight away, I saw myself as a Leicester player. Went home, and I went home really excited about it, because I've gone from being almost abandoned to someone showing me pure love and how important that I was going to be to the future of the football club and stuff, you know. And I obviously spent 6 years at the club, and, you know, we had some successful times, some tough times as well, obviously being relegated and promoted and then relegated again. But I think with the players that we had, I think Leicester was punching above its weight at the time, to be honest with you, you know, the teams that we were playing against. But yeah, no, going back to the initial feeling was I was very disappointed and even heartbroken to a point, because I'd been at Chelsea since the age of 11, and never once did I ever visualise myself playing for anybody else apart from possibly England or Jamaica. That's all I'd ever visioned, and never thought about playing for another football club at all. So that hit me hard at first, but obviously when I got into the club and the characters in the team and stuff, and knowing the boys and getting to meet the lads, and obviously knowing Muzzy already, I felt very comfortable straight away. I think I signed 2 days before the first game of the season. That's how late into pre-season it was. I signed on I signed on the Wednesday, I trained on the Thursday, and then we travelled to Old Trafford on the Friday, and I'm straight in the team. So that's how late in pre-season it was that I signed. And, you know, obviously I was excited about the first game being at Old Trafford against Man United and being straight in the side. So it took me a little while to get used to it. But obviously, you know, first of all, I was commuting from London still. And then obviously, you know, I saw my future at the club, and then I bought a property in the town centre so that I had somewhere to be comfortable and stay over whenever I needed to, while my family was still down in Surrey. So yeah, but you know, I don't regret it. For me, it was going into a team that was totally different to the team that I was at before, as in the style of football that I played. But I felt like I was more of a big fish in a smaller pond, rather than a small fish in a massive pond that I'd just come from. So I took that as a responsibility and a challenge going forward.
Massive, amazing times there, and obviously typical Martin O'Neill, like proper charmer, but he knew his stuff. Obviously great manager, great times as well. You mentioned Jamaica. So talk to me about obviously the Reggae Boys and getting called up and those experiences travelling with the national team.
Yeah, so obviously growing up as a youngster, as we all do, your ambition is to play for England. I was no different. I always wanted to play for England, and I only ever got called into one squad, and that was when Terry Venables was the manager in 1996 before the Euros, and they had a few injuries, and I got called into the squad to basically make the numbers up for training. And that was the only time I was ever called up. I went into that squad and I was training with the likes of, Gascoigne and Shearer and all those sort of guys. And I felt really comfortable in the training sessions and felt I'd done really well. So I thought to myself, well, hopefully I've left an impression on the manager. I knew I weren't going to get called completely into the squad. It was just basically to fill the numbers up, to get them through training, to prepare for the Euros. And I just thought, hopefully I've left enough of an impression on the manager that I can handle this level. And then I never really got called back again. So disappointed with that. And then obviously I looked at the right backs and the centre halves at the time. Gary Neville was obviously at the right back at the time. And then you had the likes of Gareth Southgate and who else? Rio, obviously, and people like that. That was in the squad. And I was thinking it's going to be very difficult to break into this team. But I never gave up hope. And then, obviously, late 1997, after we won the FA Cup, I had a phone call from my agent to say that Jamaica had shown an interest in signing me to play for the national team. So at the time, I was like, wow, Jamaica. I know, obviously, my heritage was Jamaican, but I never really saw them as a footballing nation, because you look at Jamaica and the West Indies and your immediate thoughts are cricket and stuff. But then obviously my agent said, no, they've qualified for the World Cup and stuff like this, and they're moving in the right direction. And the manager came to watch me play against Derby for Chelsea. And on the pitch at the time was myself, who had come to watch for Jamaica, and playing against us was Dion Burton, who was obviously playing for Jamaica at the time, Darryl Powell, who was a midfielder that had Jamaican heritage, Chris Powell, who was obviously with England now, and he was the left back for Derby. He had Jamaican heritage. So he was watching a few of us in this game. And I must admit, it was one of my better games that day. I played really well. I think we beat Derby 4-0, and I played really well on the day at right back. And then after the game, the Jamaican manager, who happened to be a Brazilian, who was always been with the Brazilian national team. So straight away, I had massive respect for him, because he's coming from a footballing great country. And he just said to me, I need you in my squad. I need you in my squad. Like that. That's all he said to me. And then he left. So got, speaking to him a few more times. Then I got to the understanding of what the implications would be joining the team. Because my biggest thing that I was thinking about was, if I'm going to join the team and there's going to be a few other English-based players from the Premier League that's going to come and join this team, what about the players that have done all this hard work to get Jamaica to the World Cup, and they're going to lose their places? And it didn't really sit that well with me initially. But then the manager made me quite clear that had always been a conversation that they'd had all the way through, that even if we qualify, you're still all fighting for your places in the team, because there's a good chance that we may strengthen the team with some English-based players that are obviously more experienced than us, and that can help us do better in the competition. So once I heard that, I was a bit more comfortable with it, and obviously made the opt to play in the World Cup. It was, the way I looked at it was, how many opportunities are you going to get to play in the World Cup? Do you know what I mean? And obviously the phone weren't ringing for England. In the last 3 seasons, I'd won the FA Cup, the League Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup, and still not getting any recognition by England. So I thought to myself, right, I'm going to have to go for this. And I was pleasantly surprised of the quality of the players. And a big thing that I realised straight away, there was the likes of Ricardo Gardner, Ricardo Fuller, that was playing for Jamaica, but playing for little Jamaican sides as well. So because we joined the team, I think we gave them that platform that they could possibly move to England. And I thought that was really important. It was a massive thing for me that almost as important as playing in the World Cup for my own personal benefit was the capability to give the players that were from Jamaica the platform to play on, that they could, make a career out of the game. And the likes of Ricardo Gardner went to Bolton for 3.5 million from a Jamaican side, which is crazy money. Yeah. And obviously had a 10-year career at Bolton and stuff like that. So that was the important part of it as well, that we had to take that responsibility.
Amazing times. And again, it's true what you're saying. Obviously, you would have thought that's in a situation where, okay, well, I don't want to just jump in the team and be taking someone's place who's got them through all those kind of group stages and things like that. So that must have been difficult. And again, but aside from that, you've gone into the team, done really well. Obviously, gave them a bit more exposure than they probably would normally get. And obviously, off the back of that, a couple of those players have managed to forge careers out in England. So again, obviously, that's massive from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing was that the players understood that. Do you know what I mean? It was in some ways, some of them wouldn't benefit they wouldn't make the Jamaica squad that was going to go to the World Cup. But the bigger picture was, as a group of people, as a nation of footballers, they would all benefit from obviously the platform of being able to go to America, go to Europe, and that side of it. And I think that was the understanding that they had to take on board.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. In terms of just a couple more things I always like to ask people when it comes to like the end of the chat. So, kind of, do you think more help's needed when it comes to athletes transition away from their chosen sport? So whether it be rugby, tennis, cricket, whatever. When it comes to approaching retirement, do you think more help's needed from, I'm talking everyone, so parents, teammates, governing bodies, everyone really? What are your thoughts on that?
Helps on what? Sorry, Dan?
Do you think there's more help needed for like athletes when it comes to approaching retirement?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's something that obviously individually you've got to look to support yourself. First and foremost, I don't think you can be sitting around and not being proactive and just not thinking about what you're going to do after you finish the game. If you're prepared to, invest in yourself, then there is stuff out there, certainly in football. I'd imagine in most of the other sports now that there is things in place and tools in place that you can either educate yourself, you can start, planning towards your retirement, regardless of the financial implications in the individual. The biggest thing for me about retirement is having something to do, having something to wake up for in the morning. So you don't have to have a specialized job, but what you need is that routine, that continuous routine that you've always had as a professional sports person. I think that's just as important as in the financial side of it as well. But certainly there's things in place. I think the governing bodies do put things in place and do initially help young players that are coming through and young sportsmen that are coming through. I think they've got better, they're better equipped to deal with that now than in our day, certainly when we was growing up. But yeah, ultimately for me, I think it's something that the individual's got to think about more than anything. And then if you want to help, then the help is there for you.
Definitely. And is there any advice that you want to give to anyone? Anyone, so within any sport, young or old, or middle, in terms of middle status within their career, is there any advice that you want to give to anyone going forward?
No, all I'd say is from my own experiences is treat your profession with the respect that it deserves and do things in the right way, because, especially from an area that I came from, it was a little bit loose as in the professionalism. And I think that's got better over the years. And, I'm always preaching to the players that I work with, work to your maximum, work for as long as you can. You look at the example that Cristiano Ronaldo shows in his work ethic and him still being at the top at the age he's at. It's not a coincidence. It's because he's put the time in. So all I would say is, don't have no regrets when you retire. Give it your maximum that you can be the best you can be. And then, you won't have no regrets and you can look back on it fondly.
Amazing. Great advice. Appreciate your time today, Cinco. Obviously, we haven't spoken in years, like I said, so great to catch up. If you want to just let everyone know kind of, again, where we can find you, obviously what you're doing now, the companies that you're working for, where we can find you on the socials, if you're on social media, just let everyone know.
Yeah, so I'm not massive on the social media. I only really use Twitter, and my handle is Frank M Sinclair, at Frank M Sinclair, M for Mohammed, my middle name. And you know, obviously, I've just left Port Vale, speaking to a few different clubs about different roles for this season. So the phone's been really busy, and I'm going to have to make some decisions, some tough decisions that. Really looking forward to the future, and the future's bright. You know, I'm always working hard at educating myself in the coaching side of it, and I'm fortunate enough to have great relationships still with the likes of Chelsea TV, Sky Sports, Talk Sport, and BBC 5 Live, etc. So you know, the future's bright. I'm going to be busy, and I love to be busy, Danny. So it's been a pleasure speaking to you again, and yeah, let's do this again halfway through the season or something, and see where we're all at now at the time, and hopefully the pandemic will get a little bit easier and we can all start getting out and about a bit more.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, really appreciate your time. Like I said, enjoyed the chat, and hopefully we'll, like I said, catch up soon. Appreciate that, and yeah, keep in touch. Speak soon.
Top man.
Thanks, mate. See you later on.
All right, nice one, Danny, mate. I'll speak to you soon. Yeah.
Nice one.